What if the very thing you crave most is the very thing keeping you trapped? Every time you pick up your phone, refresh your feed, or chase after the next pleasure, your brain is flooded with dopamine. For a few seconds, you feel alive, but soon the emptiness returns, and then the cycle repeats. Imagine this. You've had a long day. You're tired, restless, maybe even anxious. You reach for your phone telling yourself just 5 minutes. An hour later, you're still scrolling. Nothing truly satisfying has happened. You're left drained, unfocused, and oddly hollow inside. Sound familiar? Here's the bold truth. What you're experiencing is not harmless. It's not just entertainment. It's a trap, a neurological hijacking of the brain's most powerful motivation system. And the cost? Your time, your purpose, and your soul. For thousands of years, philosophers and spiritual teachers warned us about this. The Stoics called it the enslavement of desire. Buddhism described it as attachment that leads to suffering. Christianity speaks of it as idolatry, worshiping fleeting pleasures instead of living for something higher. Now, neuroscience confirms what they always knew. Dopamine-driven pleasure-seeking does not bring joy. It only breeds more craving. And until we understand this, we will continue to mistake the thrill of stimulation for the depth of fulfillment. But there is another way. A way to break free from the dopamine trap and reclaim your life. Not by rejecting pleasure, but by transcending it. By choosing purpose over distraction. By learning the ancient art of living in alignment with something greater than yourself. This is the journey we're about to take. Let's begin. The hijacking of the brain. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but that's not quite true. Neuroscience reveals it's actually the motivation chemical. It's not about the reward itself, it's about the anticipation, the drive, the wanting. In the past, this system kept us alive. Our ancestors needed dopamine to hunt, gather, and pursue survival. It pushed them forward to secure food, shelter, and safety. Without dopamine, humanity would not have made it this far. But here's the problem. In today's world, that same survival mechanism has been hijacked. Social media, fast food, gambling, pornography, video games, all are designed with one thing in mind: to keep you hooked. Every swipe, every notification, every flashing light is engineered to drip-feed your brain another dose of dopamine. The result? Your brain learns to chase stimulation instead of meaning. And just like a drug, the more you consume, the less satisfied you feel. Over time, the baseline of pleasure drops. Things that once brought joy, a walk in nature, a good book, meaningful conversation, no longer register. Why? Because your brain has been rewired to demand constant, high-intensity hits of dopamine. This is why you can scroll endlessly, binge for hours, and still feel empty. The system is not broken, it's working exactly as it's designed, just not in your favor. The Stoics warned about this 2,000 years ago. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." The craving never ends because dopamine was never meant to satisfy. It was meant to propel. And in the modern world, we are propelled into a cycle of endless wanting, but never arriving. The first step to breaking free? Seeing the trap for what it is. The illusion of pleasure. We think pleasure is the reward. But in truth, pleasure is a fleeting shadow, gone the moment we try to hold it. What we're chasing is not happiness, but relief. Relief from boredom, anxiety, emptiness, or the silence of being with ourselves. Imagine biting into a piece of cake. For a moment, it's divine. The sweetness lights up your senses, dopamine surges, your brain says, "This is good." But 10 minutes later, you want another slice. Why? Because the joy wasn't in the cake, it was in the anticipation, the chase. The pleasure never lingers long enough to satisfy. This is why Augustine, the great Christian thinker, prayed, "Our hearts are restless until they rest in you." He recognized that worldly pleasures cannot fill the infinite longing of the human soul. They soothe, they distract, but they do not complete us. Neuroscience agrees. Studies show that dopamine spikes not when you receive a reward, but when you anticipate one. The brain is wired to chase, not to rest. That's why pleasure without purpose feels empty. It never delivers the deep satisfaction we're wired to seek. The Buddha understood this too. He taught that craving is the root of suffering because it binds us to a cycle of thirst that can never be quenched. When pleasure becomes the goal, life turns into an endless treadmill, running, striving, chasing, yet never arriving. This is the illusion of pleasure. It whispers promises it cannot keep. It keeps us hooked, always believing the next hit will finally satisfy. But the truth? It never does, and until we see through this illusion, we remain slaves to it. So if pleasure cannot fulfill us, what can? The ancient wisdom of restraint. Long before dopamine was discovered, ancient traditions understood the danger of unrestrained desire. They spoke of temperance, discipline, and moderation, not as punishments, but as paths to freedom. The Stoics warned that indulgence makes us weak. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." To the Stoics, freedom wasn't doing whatever you wanted. It was rising above the chains of compulsion. Christianity echoes this. Fasting, prayer, and self-denial were not about rejecting the world, but about training the soul. By saying no to lesser desires, believers learn to say yes to something higher. Christ himself warned, "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul?" In other words, what use is endless pleasure if it costs you your purpose? Even Eastern traditions reveal the same truth. In Taoism, the way is about harmony, not excess. In Buddhism, detachment is the road to liberation. Across cultures, across centuries, the message repeats, restraint is not deprivation, it is strength. Neuroscience confirms this ancient wisdom. Studies show that delaying gratification, like in the famous marshmallow experiment, builds resilience, focus, and long-term success. Self-control isn't about denying joy. It's about rewiring the brain to value meaning over momentary thrill. Think of the athlete who trains daily, sacrificing comfort for victory. The musician who practices in silence, giving up distractions for mastery. The monk who fasts, not to suffer but to awaken clarity. Each chooses restraint, and in doing so unlocks a deeper freedom. Here's the paradox. The less you are controlled by pleasure, the more joy you actually feel. Because true joy isn't found in chasing dopamine, it's found in aligning your life with purpose. And that's where we go next. The purpose you were designed for. If pleasure is fleeting and restraint is freeing, then what is the ultimate goal? The answer lies in purpose. Purpose is not pleasure's opposite, it's its replacement. It takes the same energy we waste on cravings and redirects it toward meaning. Pleasure says, "What do I want right now?" Purpose asks, "What am I here for?" Neuroscience shows that living with purpose literally changes the brain. When people engage in meaningful goals, whether through service, creativity, or faith, the brain's reward circuitry still lights up, but in a more sustained and balanced way. Dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin create not just spikes, but a steady state of fulfillment. The ancients knew this long before brain scans. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." Purpose elevates us beyond survival. It directs our energy towards something that outlasts pleasure's short-lived thrill. Christianity places purpose at the center of existence. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. To live without purpose is to live against our very design. That's why a life of consumption always feels hollow. And modern psychology confirms this. Studies show that people with a strong sense of meaning live longer, healthier lives. They recover from setbacks faster, experience less depression, and even have stronger immune systems. Think of Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust by clinging not to pleasure but to purpose. In the darkest of camps, he wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." This is the cure for the dopamine trap. Not more pleasure, but deeper purpose. Without it, life feels like a void. With it, even suffering can be transformed into strength. The brain on balance. It's tempting to think we must reject all pleasure to live with purpose, but that's not the truth. The real key is balance. Living with mastery over dopamine rather than slavery to it. The human brain is designed for reward. Dopamine motivates us to eat, to connect, to create, to love. Without it, life would be dull and lifeless. The problem isn't dopamine, it's when dopamine becomes our master. Neuroscientists call this dopamine dysregulation. When we flood the brain with artificial highs, junk food, social media, endless scrolling, the receptors dull. Like turning up the volume too high on speakers, the brain becomes numb. What once brought joy now feels flat. We need more stimulation, more intensity, more novelty, and the cycle deepens. Ancient wisdom anticipated this. Aristotle spoke of the golden mean, virtue as the balance between extremes. Too little pleasure makes life barren, too much makes life shallow. True flourishing is found in harmony. This is why spiritual traditions never rejected joy. They redefined it. The Psalms speak of delighting in God. The Stoics praised the simple pleasures of nature and friendship. Buddhism celebrates compassion as the highest form of happiness. These weren't dopamine spikes, but states of being, sustainable, meaningful, balanced. Modern science mirrors this. Gratitude practices, meditation, and prayer activate reward pathways in ways that don't desensitize the brain. They create calm, steady joy instead of frantic highs. Purpose-driven habits, exercise, service, creativity, do the same. Balance doesn't mean denying yourself pleasure, it means choosing pleasures that enrich rather than enslave. A meal with family, a walk in nature, deep prayer, helping a stranger. These don't leave you empty, they fill you. In balance, dopamine becomes not a trap, but a tool. And when aligned with purpose, it becomes the fuel for a flourishing life. Breaking free from the trap. How do we break free once we realize we're caught in the dopamine trap? The first step is awareness. You cannot change what you do not see. Most of us don't even realize how programmed we are. Our fingers reach for our phones before our minds even wake up. Our brains chase the next notification like a rat in a lab pressing the dopamine lever. But here's the truth. You are not the rat. You are the one who can step away from the lever. Neuroscience offers us hope. The brain is plastic. It can rewire itself. When we remove constant stimulation, even for short periods, the dopamine receptors reset. This is why practices like fasting, digital detoxes, or silent retreats have been part of nearly every spiritual tradition. They break the cycle. They teach the brain that stillness, simplicity, and presence can be enough. Ancient wisdom mirrors this. The Desert Fathers of Christianity retreated into silence to find God beyond the noise. Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort to prove to themselves that luxury was unnecessary. Buddhists developed meditation to master desire rather than be ruled by it. Modern psychology has its own version, behavioral detox. Studies show that even a week of reduced stimulation, less social media, less sugar, more nature, lowers anxiety, sharpens focus, and increases happiness. Breaking free isn't about abandoning pleasure forever. It's about pressing reset. It's about learning that you are more than your cravings, and that freedom comes when you choose, rather than when you're compelled. In truth, breaking the dopamine trap is not a loss, it's a liberation. Living a life of purposeful joy. Once the trap is broken, the real work begins. Building a life where joy is rooted in purpose, not in fleeting highs. Purposeful joy looks different from the thrill of instant pleasure. It's quieter, deeper, and more enduring. It comes from knowing that what you do matters, not just for yourself, but for others, and for something larger than yourself. Neuroscience shows that people who cultivate gratitude, service, and spirituality experience more consistent states of well-being. Their brains release oxytocin and serotonin, the chemicals of connection and contentment, more than dopamine. These aren't frantic spikes, but stable rivers of joy. Ancient traditions align perfectly with this. The Stoics believed happiness was found in living in harmony with nature and reason. Christianity teaches that joy flows from love, not from possessions. Buddhism calls this sukha, a lasting inner happiness born from wisdom and compassion. Real-life case studies confirm this. People who live for service, teachers, caregivers, volunteers, often report higher life satisfaction than those chasing wealth or fame. It's not because their lives are easier, it's because their lives are meaningful. The paradox is clear. When you stop chasing happiness, you start living it. When you stop seeking pleasure, joy finds you. And that is the life beyond the dopamine trap. Not ascetic denial, but abundant, purposeful joy. A joy rooted not in the next notification, the next purchase, the next thrill, but in the eternal truths that have guided humanity for centuries. Love, meaning, connection, and purpose. The bold choice before you. So, here you are, faced with a choice. Will you keep feeding the dopamine trap, chasing highs that always fade, or will you step into the deeper, richer life of purpose? The truth is, pleasure will always call to you. Your phone will buzz. Your cravings will whisper. The world will tempt you with shiny distractions. But you are not your impulses. You are not your cravings. You are not the endless hunger of your dopamine system. You are the one who can choose. The ancients knew this choice defined everything. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The scriptures echo, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And neuroscience confirms it. You can rewire your brain. You can break free. You can live for something greater. But here's the bold truth. Nobody can make this choice for you. You can keep numbing yourself with cheap pleasures, or you can reclaim your life by aligning your mind, your heart, and your soul with purpose. This is the real rebellion in a world addicted to dopamine. To live not for the next hit, but for the eternal. If this message resonates with you, don't just let it fade. Choose one small act today, a moment of silence, an act of kindness, a step towards your higher calling. Begin the rewiring. Begin the return. And if you want more truths like this, truths that challenge, awaken, and liberate, subscribe to LuminousSoul. Because your soul was made for more, and your life is waiting.